So, welcome to an arc short, hopefully short. I have a tendency of running on and not realizing how much time has elapsed since I started gabbing. My thoughts on Scorched Earth. Now, I made it clear when I left the island that I was tired of it, and I didn't mean to imply, and I think I stated already that I didn't mean to imply that the island was in any way bad. It's just that I had several restarts on the island. I had either had or purposefully wiped my stuff and started over again. And the thing was, if I was anywhere on the island without a compass, without a GPS, I could probably tell you exactly where I was on the island without any sort of navigational assistance. I was that familiar with the topography of the island. And that kind of familiarity truly does breed contempt. So I was eager to head off and sort of start over again on a new map and plunder its secrets and explore. The problem is, my first impression of Scorched Earth, before I understood, moving your survivor between servers and how all that worked, we're talking about when I just started Ark. Because by the time I joined, Extinction was already done, and I think Genesis came out less than a year after I had started. When I first came on Scorched Earth, I came on with a fresh survivor, with no equipment and no levels, and it is excruciatingly painful trying to get a start on Scorched Earth without gear or knowing what in the hell you're doing, because of course I do now. So a fresh start on Scorched Earth is pain. You will experience just concentrated agony. However, once you have experience and you have stuff under your belt in Ark, and especially if you're coming in with an existing survivor that has some fortitude, that has some starter equipment, because I basically filled the Ark transmitter slots when I came to Scorched Earth, so I had 50-odd items to bring in, including my tames. I do not use the creature transmit function. It glitches out all the time and ends up wiping your dinos. Put them in a cryopod, transfer them as an item. If you know what's good for you. So I brought a selection of primitive firearms, a selection of fabricated advanced firearms, a set of ghillie, because I know how treacherous the Scorched Earth climate is, and to some extent that passive threat is kind of one of the things that makes this map unique, but also not necessarily the best, because depending on the weather conditions outside, if you don't have enough levels in fortitude or you don't have the right gear, you might be stuck inside because it's literally just too hot for you to go out there and do anything. The benefit of my ghillie gear, all of which is ascendant, none of which was spawned in. It was either obtained from supply drops on the island or made from blueprints from those drops. Mind you, I did increase the rarity of items received from drops because I'm running through these about a map a month and not several months to a year, so I wanted to compress down getting the good items faster so I could just have it done. And my ghillie gear is so good. I've also painted it in order to match the backdrop. Important thing to note with ghillie, because of course it is designed to be a sort of sneaky outfit, match the environment with it. So I've got a bit of green. Most of the green in the chest is a result of the glider suit. You can't paint all of the aspects of the chest plate like you normally would. But I've got a mixture of tan and a sort of earthy brown. And the reason for that, of course, is that you would think that in desert, tan would be the best, but not all of Scorched Earth is desert. And the idea, of course, is that up high, if you are positioned against something, the brown is actually better camouflage from a distance. Whereas if you're out in the open, the desert color actually helps to blend you in a bit better. And critically, you want to keep your outline nice and broken up. So this armor in a PvP setting, not that I would ever do that in Ark, this armor in a PvP setting, the way I've colored it, would probably be pretty effective. You could, of course, create more highly specialized camo patterns, desert-specific, rock-specific, if you really want to min-max it, but I wanted to get the most I could out of one set of armor. As for its insulation value, Yes, I have 1,107 hypothermal insulation, with which my 42 fortitude, I can basically run around during a heat wave and not even feel hot. Which kind of breaks the passive hazard of Scorched Earth. Heat is the major thing here, and this armor renders that kind of moot. Now, in a PvE setting or a single-player setting, water is another consideration. But of course, again, it's an easy solution. If you're in a PvP server, having access to water is going to be a problem. Because this whole central canal, running roughly the length of the map, is going to have players all over it. And that leads me to one of the reasons I think some people think very fondly of Scorched Earth, despite the fact that I am about to go into my critique of it. In a PvP setting, where you want to downplay some of the sneakiness and hidden bases and so forth, the map is very flat, and while it has very defensible positions, like, say, at the top of that mesa, cannot take 2 steps in Scorched Earth without stumbling over something that wants to eat you. So, like that mesa, would be great for building a position that would be almost unassailable from the ground. However, hiding something on this map, while not impossible, would be a challenge, because you don't have dense woodland or high trees, low trees, the shadowing they produce. Everything is just very open. And while Adobe does a good job of naturally blending in without even having to be painted, there's also the fact that this map, to me, feels very claustrophobic. Like, it's a very tight map. I'm not sure of its exact dimensions, but it feels, to me, smaller than the island, and part of that is because of its makeup. If you think of the ecology of the island, you know, the redwoods, swamp, forest, grasslands, beaches, the frozen areas, mountainous terrain, ice-capped mountains, there's a lot of variety. Scorched Earth is desert and mountains. That's it. Desert and mountains. There are some greener regions. I'm sort of looking at one right in front of me. But for the most part, you have the outer area of the map, the Dune Sea, which is just flat desert with the occasional salt deposit, ruined structure, or oases. Mountains sort of speckled all over the map, which are depicted in the topography. But just looking at this map, given that it does have rings to mark the topography, you can see how bland it is, all things considered. And while from a PvP's perspective, that's good for making encounters more frequent, making bases more obvious, you can have a more frenetic experience here on Scorched Earth. And because of competition for things like access to water, players are going to be drawn to a common place. So if you're looking for a fight, if you're spoiling for one, you know where to go. In a PvE setting, it's boring. Because for PvE, you're getting what you need to survive, which, without player competition, is not that difficult. You're assembling what you need to get the artifacts and to fight the final boss, which the Manticore has some effects, like torpor-inducing effects, but it is actually one of the squishier arc bosses. It goes down pretty quickly. And if I'm not mistaken, there'll be a little subtitle if I am, but if I'm not mistaken, you can bring flyers into the Manticore arena. So you could swarm it with a bunch of specially leveled Argies or Wyverns, which I think was the intention, considering they were introduced with this map. And the caves themselves are easy to run, and there's only 3 of them, because there's only the one Guardian. You don't have 3, and there's no Overseer. So you've got 3 caves that are easy, so there's not a lot to prepare for, and you have a boss that is difficult in its own right, in its own way, but is nothing compared to what you encounter. Like, the dragon is tougher than the Manticore. And of course, if you were eagle-eyed, you might have noticed that this base up here at the top of the hill, which is nice and left alone. There's the Manticore, actually. I've fought it once at Gamma. You all will get to see a video when I take it on at the Alpha difficulty. The Manticore... this base I'm jumbling my words. This base is my second iteration of the development. If I actually bother to put tech-level gear and so forth in on this map, I'm going to go over to that land bridge and actually build a cliff platform over there. One of the real problems right now that's testing my patience is that I'm trying to process enough iron, raw iron, metal, into ingots so that I can build an industrial forge to speed up subsequent processing. Now, I'm perfectly aware that I could speed up that process by... I'm perfectly aware that I could speed up that process by using more than one forge, but I don't feel like creating like a half a dozen forges just to build one thing and then I'm never using them again. So I mentioned the eagle-eyed viewers might have already noticed that here at my starter base, this little pathetic thatch squat before I could build things out of Adobe, or however that's meant to be pronounced, has my cave dinos from the tech cave on the island, and I use them for the gamma fight. They worked well, but then again, this group absolutely devastated the Overseer. I didn't have much concern that they wouldn't be able to handle the Manticore. The real problem with the Manticore being that it tends to spend a lot of its time in the air, where ground-based mounts like this can't really do much. Still, I will be crossing that bridge when I come to it. Now, again, a little bit of context before I close off, because again, this probably has run longer than I'm thinking in my brain. Without Scorched Earth sustaining Ark through a period when interest in it had dropped off pretty significantly, we would not have had the Ark experience that we have today. All the maps, both paid and free, and they're all, like, very beautiful. Ark has a much more elaborate backdrop than a lot of its contemporary survival crafting games from the era. But Scorched Earth feels incomplete. I mean, aside from the fact that the map feels small, because like I said, it could, for all I know, have the same dimensions as the island. I would doubt that. But there's just so much less going on. Open desert for a big portion of it. When you think of the oceans on the island, which have literal depth to them. Open, flat desert. We have all this mountainous terrain, but no forests, no swamps. There are fewer biomes, really, that we're working with here. So it feels like there's less to explore. Like, if you look to your right, you'll see desert. If you look to your left, you'll see more desert. And the fact that there's just the 3 caves... I mean, there's only 3 caves in Aberration as well. However, in Aberration, you have 3 different zones, which have sort of internal biomes. There's the green zone, which has some plain-like areas. There's more dense wood, there's fungal wood, and then you go to the blue zone where it's almost entirely fungal wood, and then watery environments, and then deeper still you have the irradiated red zone. And I suppose that while biome-wise it's not much different or better off than Scorched Earth, but thematically, if you just looking at Scorched Earth, tans, deep browns. That's it. In Aberration, the green zone is very green, and you have lights coming in from the sky, and that's another point. You also have the surface in Aberration. And you have all these hazards, which the thing with Scorched Earth using heat is that it is oppressive, it is extremely difficult to work around, but once you get something, like I said, some basic high-end ghillie, no problem. Once you work around the water problem, which would be more difficult, depending on whether you're competing with other players or not, that also ceases to be an issue. For all intents and purposes, with the level of preparedness that I have now, this has just become the island again. And that's where the kind of boring comes in, for my mind. Whereas in Aberration, you need a lot of special preparation. You need hazard suits, you need mushrooms or broths for radiation protection. There's a lot more nuance in Aberration, and it also has some of the tames that are still well liked. And I think part of the reason, because we all know that Wildcard has cut out a number of the tames in the free DLC maps that used to be there. Crystal Isles had a lot of creatures cut. The thing is, they pretty much have never cut anything included in the free DLC maps from Scorched Earth. And I suspect the reason for that is that Scorched Earth, the map, there's not a whole lot to bring and or keep players here. You're going to do your thing, and then you're going to leave, and you're probably not even going to think about it ever again. I know once I beat the Manticore on Alpha, I'm out of here and onto Aberration, where I will probably spend 5 times the amount of time I've spent here doing my thing on Aberration, and enjoying it more, to boot. And so the developers were basically like, okay, well, we'll just make the desert biome part of the existing biomes. You see that in Extinction. You see that to... You see that in 3... I'm trying to think. 3 of the free DLCs. It's in Ragnarok, it's in Crystal Isles, and it's in Lost Island. It is not present in the Center, because the Center was made before Scorched Earth, so these assets didn't even exist. And it's not present in Valguero. I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't present in Valguero. I'm guessing that the creator of that map just decided, nah, man, I'm good. But yeah, Scorched Earth, I found underwhelming. I mean, like I said, it's if you're doing a PvP thing, I can see the appeal. But if you're running PvE, honestly, there's really no reason to come here. If you're looking for the Manticore fight, you can fight him alongside the dragon on Ragnarok. If you're looking for tames, you can find them on pretty much any of the other maps that feature a desert. The only unique tame, the only truly unique tame here to Scorched Earth is the Phoenix, and to the same extent of the Unicorn, sure, the Phoenix has its own use, but it's not some radical game-changing tame. You mostly just have it for the bragging rights, because there's supposed to be only one Phoenix on the map at a time, and it's only physically manifest during the heatwave weather thing. So the fact that you were able to track it down and to tame it in that limited time span and what have you, it's a bragging right tame. It's not something utilitarian. So if you're running these maps, as I am, in a sequence from release to the most recent, if you want to skip Scorched Earth, or if you're thinking about buying the DLC maps and you're wondering if Scorched Earth is worth it, I have to say no, probably not. I mean, they're selling editions of the game which offer the maps as a set. If you're going to get Scorched Earth like that, fine, but don't buy Scorched Earth specifically. It's just... it's incomplete. I mean, no Ascension. I mean, sure, there's only one boss in Aberration, too. That's another criticism. There's only one boss in Aberration, but you have an Ascension. You gain an additional 15 levels if you beat it at Alpha. That doesn't exist here on Scorched Earth. I don't even think there are any special tech grams that you get from beating the Manticore. There is effectively no reason in a PvE setting to come here. Anyway, I know I've probably pissed somebody off with my bitching and moaning, but, yeah, my thoughts on Scorched Earth. Fun place to visit, I wouldn't want to live here. Which is why I'll be heading out of here the first chance I get. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you'll see me battle the Manticore. And since this will probably air before the caves, I hope you'll watch those. I hope you're all staying happy and healthy out there. I don't know if I already said that. I'm rambling! Fare thee well, dear viewers. Fare thee well. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, boys and girls?